He's good. Good morning, everybody. We're ready to begin. If committee members could please take their seats so we have quorum. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt the party that's going on in the room. I never wanted to be a party pooper, but we have some business to attend to this morning. Great. If we can have committee members please take their seats, we're ready to begin. I understand Councillor Cressy has a tee-off time at 11:30, so we gotta get going here. Welcome to meeting 30 of the Community Development and Recreation Committee. 30? Yep. 30. We've been together 30 times. Yes, and I should point out that this is the last gathering of our group this term. Where's Jan? Yeah. So welcome to, obviously, committee members. And I have a few concluding comments a little later in the meeting. I'll just wait a few minutes. For those in the room with us, the screen at the back of the room provides real-time updates concerning where we are on the agenda, what's up next. And of course, as always, we can always follow the debate on your tablet, computer, or smartphone at toronto.ca/council. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Hearing none. Confirmation of the minutes of June the 13th, 2018. Councillor Cressy. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we can go through the agenda. We have deputations for item 6 and item 1. So item 1, we will hold for deputations. They're not on your green sheet, but they were added after the sheet was printed. Who are they? Yeah. Ismail Afra and Hani Afra, part of Access to Recreation. Okay, great. Item number 2, amendment to contract 4701-8546, Roy Foss Chevrolet Buick GMC. Moved by Councillor Cressy. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 3, results of the assessment for quality improvement implementation review. Moved by Councillor Fletcher. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 4, suitability of identified property as a proposed shelter. There is a confidential attachment.
I'm going to move that sine die or defer indefinitely. In case I need to bring that back sometime, or somebody needs to. Yeah, please.
Okay, so we're going to move it, deferred indefinitely?
Defer indefinitely. D-I.
Okay, a motion to defer indefinitely. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 5, portable housing benefits, special priority policy, program extension. And we should move it before this program is cut. It's a provincial. Oh, no, sorry. I forgot there was a Ford in the room. What do I know? Yeah. We gotta ram this stuff through. All right, no, let's. Hopefully the check's in the mail, and we urge staff to get it certified when it arrives. All those in favor of moving item number 5, portable housing benefit? Councillor Cressy. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we have a deputation for number 6, 2017-2018 out of the code program operation. So we will hold that item. So we can go back to the top of the agenda. Artificial ice rink standards, cross hockey impacts, and the feasibility of skate rental programs at city-operated rinks. And this is a staff report update. We have 2 deputations. Ismail Afra, access to recreation. Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ishmael Afra. I am a community support worker that just began doing this type of work only about 3 months ago. And I began doing this work with a group called Access to Recreation. They are a group of parents and families in Regent Park who are going through a lot of redevelopments that's been happening in the area. And a lot of opportunities came through Regent Park because of those redevelopments, like new sports grounds, new aquatic centers, new community center, all sorts of new opportunities came to that part of the area. And one of the major concerns that immediately came through this family is the lack of community members in these spaces. So they immediately raised the concern among themselves, started talking to each other, and afterwards got support from 2 agencies in Regent Park. One was the YSM, and the other one was the TD Learning Center, and they got them together to have conversations, to do agendas, to set up meetings, to set up a work plan in terms of increasing access, equitable access to recreational spaces. And one of the first few projects they did was making sure that they talked to the managers, the facility, those people in charge, to make sure that there was more efforts put into making sure that more families from the neighborhood areas would come in and live there. Now, today we come because of this opportunity to have skate lending programs in key neighborhoods. And we were very excited to hear the city getting involved among its efforts to increase opportunities for equitable access to skate lending, affordable skate lending. And when we first saw this opportunity, a lot of people from different agencies got together to make sure that they animate the skate rinks that's available in Regent Park. For the first time, I saw young people who were much more familiar with skates than the older generation. The older generation, the parents couldn't skate because they didn't have the opportunity beforehand. But for the first time, even myself, who've never been on an ice rink, right? It was one of the first times I ever stepped on an ice rink, and the sensation was quite interesting for me. And it was one of the things that got captured in CBC National. The first, I actually fall down. I think I was set up by that reporter who got me on the ring and captured it on footage. But what I wanted to discuss with you is this is a great opportunity to increase access and equitable access to skate lending. And as many of you know, there are really good reasons why programs like this should be started. One of the reasons is you have with you a lot of strategies on the table. For instance, you have the Toronto Strong Neighborhoods, you have the Youth Equity Strategy, you have the Poverty Reduction Strategy. All these strategies tell you that the best way to improve a neighborhood is to offer more opportunities and more programming for young people. And when we did our first workshop as a community support worker, we wanted to create employment opportunities in Regent Park. And when we spoke to the youth, the first thing we found out that they didn't have experience in some of the fields, right? They didn't know how to swim, they didn't know how to skate, so they were limited in terms of employment opportunities with Parks and Rec because in their childhood they were not given enough opportunities in these key areas. So if you are able to provide an opportunity like this to make it more accessible and equitable to access skate rentals, it would increase opportunities for youth in a very impactful way. Right? Our efforts cannot be in silos, right? We want to offer employment, but that employment has to capture the youth's childhood experience. If the youths are not able to experience skates or swimming, then even if you offer them opportunities of employment, it won't matter, right? So I wanted to say that this item of skate lending opportunities, creating it and making it available, works well with all the strategies you have in mind, and I think it will improve, the outcomes are very high, right? Especially for neighborhood improvement areas where typically they're not, they don't engage in these opportunities. So I wanted to thank you, and that's all I have to say.
Great, thank you very much. You have a couple of questions here. Councillor Ford, question for the deputant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for coming down to City Hall and deputing on this item. Just one quick question. In the report we have before us, one of the, I guess, key conditions to moving forward with this is looking at investment opportunities, I guess, through third parties for skates and equipment, such as helmets and what have you. Are you aware anywhere across the city, or especially in Regent Park, of those third parties who are willing to come to the table to do that?
So, one of the first things that came through because of this report was that 200 skates were offered to the City of Toronto and that they were not able to accept it for policy reasons. And so opportunities like that will come through the channel if we intentionally are prepared for it, right? So the concern from this item came because of that, because the city didn't have any means to interact with opportunities like that. This would ensure that that the city is prepared for future opportunities and to get itself ready. So my concern is to make sure that there are great opportunities like that, and that we are able to, that the city is ready if opportunities like that, or even initiate opportunities like that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Hani Afra? Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today, this morning. I would like to introduce myself. Already know my name, Hani Afra, and I'm one of activists in Regent Park. That I'm a mother. I have 3 kids. One is 13-year-old, one is 12-year-old, and one is 3-year-old. And when I came here, I was 15, and I always like to be involved in community centers, and I became who I am. I became a community worker. I went to George Brown to become a community worker. And one of the reasons that I became who I am is because of the recreation programs that I had in my community, and I was enjoying myself. Same thing with my kids right now. They didn't know how to swim because I put them to swimming lessons. Now they want to be lifeguards. So I know the benefits of having extra recreational in the community, and ice rink, we have it in Regent Park. As you guys know, Regent Park is becoming a mix of low income and middle classes, and we had the ice rink rental for 2 times in Regent Park, and the community really loved it. They really enjoyed it. My kids were on the ice, even though they didn't know how to skate. They were like, you can see the happiness in their faces. I wanted to push for recreational programs in the community because it helped me and it helped my children. And I wanted these city councils to consider this opportunity for the community, either for leisure activities for the youth in the community or future employment. I know the report said it costs money. Everything that's good quality, it does cost money. And it benefits the city in the long run. Because when the kids are coming to the ice rink to skate and enjoy themselves, it's a positive way. And it impacts the families when they can come together, mingle with other families, and see this an opportunity where they can socialize and also get skills. The reason I want you to consider this opportunity for the community is that it provides the community to come together, because now we have people who live in social housing and people who's renting the new condos. So this is one way they can come together and intermingle and create a positive community. I think I said everything I wanted to say, so thanks so much for listening.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant?
Did you say one of your children is now a lifeguard because they learned to swim?
She's getting trained as a lifeguard. Yeah, she finished all the levels of swimming lessons, and now she's getting trained to become a lifeguard. Yeah.
And that was at the community center or the pool?
At the Regent Park Aquatic Center, or like we use all around the swimming pools in the community. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Even I want to share with you another story in the swimming pool. Like before, we never had the opportunity. When we got the aquatic center, all the families, they were in the shallow end. Today, they're all in the deep end, most of them. Like my kids, myself, my 3-year-old almost getting there. So you see the benefit when you get provided, you improve your skills and also benefits the community and then benefits the whole Toronto. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. I have one question for you. The heading of the report is actually rental, but lending is really what you're referring to, where we have an opportunity to lend skates out for an hour or two, people who want to use it, so that we lower the barriers to access. Is that really what you're advocating?
Exactly, yeah, I'm advocating for that because we have the skating, we have the people who supervise it, but we don't have skating. And some of the community, that's the one barrier because the skatings are very expensive and they can't buy it. So if in a lower price, if the city rented, community will rent it and skate there because it's a fun activity, skating, and people are excited about it in the community. I wish the city councilors can give us that opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Councillor Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. So what is the city's current capacity, or what do we do in terms of skate lending or rentals across the city as of right now?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the only skate rentals that we have available right now in the community is here at Nathan Phillips Square, where that's been the standard for many, many years, and also at Dufferin Grove Park, which started from a group that was involved at Dufferin Grove Park. I think what the deputant is referencing around skate lending is we did have 100 pairs of skates donated in the Regent Park area last year, and we are putting them together as a pop-up opportunity where they can sort of rotate to a number of rinks for that lending opportunity, and happy to work with this group around when the right time would be to have those rotating through in Regent Park.
Excellent. So how are those current, so we have those two opportunities. I assume both programs per se are doing quite well. Is there demand for them?
For the skate rental and skate lending? The reason that we have skate rentals at Nathan Phillips Square is because of the amount of people that we have using the square for skating, and a lot of people out-of-town tourists, et cetera, who may not have skates with them. So it's a very popular program. The Dufferin Grove program is much smaller. I couldn't really speak to the numbers around. I think it's well utilized. I think the report we have before you indicates it's not a service standard that we have, nor are we funded for. And it certainly it isn't something that is in our strategy moving forward around extending. There's approximately 51 outdoor rinks.
Right.
As well as many, many indoor rinks. So it would be a fairly significant standard to be able to offer right across the city with a fairly expensive price tag.
Absolutely. I guess taking the outlook of putting every rink could probably be very challenging. I would assume that. But looking at neighborhood improvement areas, stuff like that, so kind of maximizing any opportunities we may have room for into neighborhood improvement areas.
So through the chair, there is a difference between skate rentals and skate lending. I should note that in most of those areas, all of our programs are free. So it would be contrary to council policy to have free skating lessons while then charging skate rental fees for the skates themselves. So what we're pursuing is the skate lending opportunity we have with these skates that have been donated as a way to provide skates in areas of the city as needed so that there isn't any fee attached to them. But other than that, skate rental itself could be a barrier from a financial perspective, from a rental perspective.
Right, but lending is still on the table. So
through the donation that we have, so to be clear, we have a donation currently of 100 skates that we're using as an opportunity to rotate around various rinks. As noted by the deputant, they've been to Regent Park a few times. We work with a number of community groups around where they should go, and we're happy to continue supporting that program.
Okay, so there's still room and still opportunity to work with community groups who want to do skate lending in their specific communities, correct? Because that
Certainly.
is what I take from the report.
That's correct.
Okay. So the cost of this program, if we looked at certain certain opportunities, is there a significant cost to the city to do this?
So the cost, I'm going to ask Howie to answer that.
On the skate, through the chair, for skate rental is similar to the current model we've got at the Dufferin Grove site. There's approximately about a $7,000-8,000 a season subsidy that goes from the city because it's more of a pay what you can model. So to provide the staff, the infrastructure, the skates, the skate sharpening, all of the other supports that go behind it, there is a net cost to the city.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Wang Tam.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask with respect to the possibility to expand this program. 100 pair of skates rotating around different rinks doesn't seem like a lot. And not also understanding what type of sizes are they for what age of children and youth, whether they fit girls and boys, are they getting equal time on the ice? Can you tell me why we are not investing more in a program that's more sustainable, that has far more city supports around it? We've got 3 million people in the city.
So through you, Mr. Chair, it isn't a program that we've ever been funded for, so it's not from a perspective of where we're moving forward, looking for additional service level enhancements. It hasn't been an area that we've looked to. There are a number of opportunities in the city. There's various groups that do skate lending, that support access to skates and equipment and funding for equipment. There's Canadian Tire. There's a whole sort of array of groups. If we were to consider it, we would certainly, we could put a budget request forward for it. But given the pressures that we're under from an operating budget perspective, I'm not sure this is one that would be our first priority, noting that all of the skating in these areas, there aren't any fees attached to that. There's skate lesson programs in these areas that are also free. And I think we do our best at each community center to try and connect families with agencies and supports that may be able to provide skates if there's an interest in it. But I should say that it's, we offer a number of different types of sports and programs and activities across the city and have never ventured into providing, the appropriate equipment for each one of those sports, such as soccer, and hockey is another one, football. It's just something within our provision level that we haven't been able to accommodate.
With the, and I'm going to veer off a little bit, but I know it's topical. So the new Barbara Ann Scott Ice Trail, that's going to be at College Park. It comes with a facility house, a rink house, where the Zamboni will rest. Would it be beneficial for that particular community to actually build out a skate program, especially given the fact that we have so many transient visitors and others?
So through the chair, I know that we're working closely with the BIA in that particular location. So if there's an opportunity to offer that type of service through some type of external provider on a rental basis, which is how it's done here at Nathan Phillips Square, I think we're certainly willing to look into what some of those possibilities might be.
So for communities that don't have BIAs and may not have the ability to attract larger corporate donors and sponsors, what do those poorer communities do?
So through the chair, just, like participation in anything, they would have to look at their skate lending, their skate exchanges. There's other things that where they could, or in some cases, as the deputant noticed, they may not be able to have skates to participate in the program.
So in Moss Park Arena, there has been in the past, because it's a long time standing tradition established by the local MPP, where he gathered a number of used skates The community was able to come out and skate, but we haven't had an MPP in our neighborhood for almost a year, and we don't know if that program is going to be reintroduced. So there's a priority strong neighborhood there, a neighborhood of desperate need for recreation, and we're left to chance whether or not that community gets a skate program this winter. They've already not had it last winter. What do we do? What do we do there?
So through the chair, I mean, this is Moss Park Arena, which is an arena board. So there are a number of programs like that across the city. I don't have a list of all of them. I mean, if it's council's priority to, make skates available and provide for the cost of all that, it's certainly something that council can consider in future budgets around expanding that program.
And my final question is, can we use Section 42 dollars for that, or even Section 37? This is capital, so we're buying skates, we're buying skate sharpening equipment.
Through the chair, I'd have to double check on Section 42 because it's parkland dedication funds. It must be spent on either the acquisition of parkland or the development of parkland in the land itself. Section 37 funds, I think, have a little bit more flexibility around how they could be spent, but I'd have to look specifically to see if that's an appropriate use of them.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Wang Tam. Councillor Fletcher was next. So I would go to speakers, but we can always come back to, if she comes back to the room, we can always come back to questions for staff. So let's go to speakers. I should point out in advance that I don't think we should terminate the discussion here at this meeting. I think we should forward this to City Council without recommendation so we can further the debate there. And that's the motion I'll be moving, and hopefully have your support.
Yeah.
Any speakers? Councillor Ford?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will be extremely brief on this. I actually have spoken to this item, I think about a year ago when we were having the same discussions about lending opportunities, rental opportunities, and kind of a broad horizon on this. So having said that, I think our ice rinks are probably one of Toronto's most valued assets across our city. We have a number of them. I know out in North Etobicoke, we have a number of them, and we're very fortunate to have them. But the reality is that hockey is a quite expensive sport. It's probably one of the most expensive sports out there. And having these assets, I think there is an opportunity to work together to create opportunities for communities around skate lending. I've had a number of organizations approach me about donating skates. So one of the, most important parts of making this become a reality is kind of at the table. And I think, as one of the deputies said, if they're at the table, we should be looking at ways to take advantage of this. This report, I think, is a good report, a good understanding of where staff are coming from. I would like to see this go a little bit further. I welcome Councillor and the Chair Pasternak's motion to move it to City Council to continue conversations around this. And to look at these gaps we have, and whether it's policy gaps, space, and what have you, I think there is room to move forward on this. So I look forward to this being a continued conversation on how we can accommodate our communities, and particularly our neighborhood improvement areas. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. And I guess to move my motion, I should speak for a minute. And I should say that we had a very wonderful experience at the Irv Chapley outdoor rink, where we had a one-day lending program on a beautiful January day a couple of years ago. It was extremely popular, where the name of the group escapes me, but they came with dozens of skates, and we had a great crowd out who enjoyed the use of the skates and the use of the rink. I think it's important that not only are skates expensive, but little kids grow. And as a father of 4, I can tell you they grow out of their skates very quickly. So it's not something you can buy, that's good for 10 years. It is something that kids grow out of very quickly, and it does create an economic barrier. I'm reminded of the bookmobile at the Toronto Public Library, where they go to various locations across the city where they're library deficient, and I'm wondering whether the same concept can work here. It's something that we should further explore, where we have a skate-mobile. It's not going to be cheap, but I think it's certainly worthwhile to explore it. So I'll move my motion that the item be forwarded to City Council without recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Now we have one more item. I'm just going to take a minute and express my thanks for the opportunity this term for the last 4 years to chair this committee. I want to thank Mayor Tory for the opportunity and the responsibility of chairing this committee, which drives much of the social policy, perhaps all of the social policy in the city. And we have taken on some of the most difficult public policy issues, certainly over the years, when it came to shelters, housing, the daycare, poverty reduction, long-term care, and of course out of the cold, which is our last item here. We also had to deal with many of the issues facing firefighting in the early part of the term, the vertical strategy. I'd like to also thank our clerk staff, Carol Kostanen, Janice Dix, Lynn Genova, and Janet Chivallo. Thank you so much for your support over the years. The committee has run very smoothly. You've assisted me and my committee members greatly. And on that note, I'd also like to thank my committee members for being dedicated to the various social policies and divisions that make this city work. It was also a great opportunity for me to visit many of the daycares across the city, the recreation centers, the pools, cricket pitches. I attended EMS graduations and, of course, the Fire Services Hero Awards, which are some of the memories that come to mind. Also, we've had 2 deputy city managers assist to my left here. Elaine Baxter Tahar and Julia Carboni have been wonderful over the years, assisting me in understanding the complex policy that we have to deal with every day when we meet here. So on that note, and of course, let me not forget the various staff and divisions. I try not to leave anyone out, I'll be in big trouble. The various staff who we've worked with very closely over the years, whether it be in recreation or EMS or housing or shelters. This is not an easy file to handle, but I think we've done very good with the resources we have. The city still remains a very safe and civil place to live, a very livable city. But there's certainly a lot of work to do in the next term. So I wanted to make sure I thanked as many people as I could for the wonderful work that's happened in this room over the last 4 years. I wish you all a safe and happy summer, and I wish you good luck in your re-election campaigns as well. So thank you very much. Thank you. So the last item is...
just on a point of privilege. On a point of personal privilege. Perhaps just on behalf of the members of the committee, the one person you didn't thank was yourself for chairing every single one of these meetings. This is our 30th meeting. And you went through the litany of issues, but it's been yeoman's work. And so just on behalf of members of this committee and Councillor Davis, who's an honorary member of this committee, though is not here today, I think we should thank you, Mr. Chair, for your work.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy and members of committee. So, but before we run off, we do have one more important issue to handle. It's item 6. It is the Out of the Cold program review. We do have a very distinguished deputant, Rafi Aaron, the Interfaith Coalition to Fight Homelessness. Rafi, once again, thank you for coming to committee, and you have 5 minutes.
Hello? There we go. Good morning. After I submitted my report to CDRC on June 13th, I learned of a situation at one of the out-of-the-cold shelters where volunteers, many who are in their early 80s, were left in vulnerable situations due to understaffing and the use of temp staff by Dixon Hall. The clergy referred to these incidents, and I quote, as very disturbing. The Interfaith Coalition to Fight Homelessness created a questionnaire to determine the level of health and safety of both volunteers and guests at each of the out-of-the-colds through the staffing levels and cleaners provided by Dixon Hall. As the information came in, it was apparent there was no staffing model. At best, it could be referred to as a minimalist approach. Councillor Pasternak, please don't mention the name of the out-of-the-cold that I'm going to talk about, because this is in no way a criticism of them. The executive director of that religious institution recalls that you had been there after dinner. If you had been there for dinner this year, there would have been one Dixon Hall staff to watch over 180 guests and volunteers in one room, and another stationed at the front door. A second site that has similar number of people in its dining area received 4 Dixon staff, 2 at the entrance to the building and 2 in the dining area. I have 13 years experience at the out-of-the-cold shelters and can tell you that even 2 staff are not sufficient for that number of people. You must have at least 3. This raises many questions about the contract the city signed with its suppliers. Why were there no minimal staffing levels stipulated in the contract for safety reasons? Why were these staffing issues not discovered in reviewing the contract prior to its renewals? Senior staff familiar with the contract told me it is based on a certain sum per site, which I won't state now, for the 16 out-of-the-colds over a 20 or 22-week period. One of the sites has opted out of receiving Dixon Hall services. Of the remaining 15 sites, 7 are small, sleeping 30 or less, and require minimal staffing. 3 sites are open for less than 20 weeks, 1 for 13 weeks, 1 for 12 weeks, and 1 for 8 weeks. It is therefore shocking that there is such blatant understaffing, an insufficient system to account for staff absences, and the use of untrained temp workers who have no experience with our guests. In a number of cases, there have been the offloading of cleaning and security responsibilities onto the out-of-the-colds who are required to pay for these services. Currently, 5 sites are paying $11,700 for cleaners. This should not be our responsibility. Other sites are simply not receiving adequate cleaners. Having less than the required number of cleaners to complete the cleaning tasks in the allotted time before each site has to reopen poses a health threat to all who use the facilities. We hope that we will get the cleaning guidelines, and I believe that we finally will, but we could have the best cleaning guidelines, but without the necessary cleaners to implement them, they are worthless. We are asking CRDC to find out the following from staff. We want to know what the staffing levels from Dixon Hall for the out-of-the-colds were for the last 3 years. We want to know how many permanent staff were hired and are there until 11:30 at night. We want to know how many part-time people have been hired. We certainly want to know the number of cleaners, and we want to know the system that it's using for absentees. I mean, is there a reserve pool? How does it work? What is needed is decisive action. The staffing needs have to be met for the 2018-19 season if we are going forward by either one of 2 avenues, the first being the Dixon Hall contract or the second being additional funding from SSHA. If the city cannot ensure the health and safety of our sites, we need to know this immediately. We are grateful that SSHA has released the money to us that remained in the Out of the Cold Capital Expense Fund. This will go a long way in helping us defray the cost of operating our programs. We will still need annual funding beginning in the 2018-19 season. After our survey, we now know that 2 out of the colds are running at a deficit this year, one of them in double digits in the thousands of dollars. 3 sites are paying $13,000 for additional security. We have provided a very compassionate service.
Rafi, if you're a little over 5 minutes, if you
Okay,
could.
I'll just wrap up.
You can include any missed remarks in the questions.
Okay.
Feel free to wrap up with us.
Okay, so just to conclude, we have provided a compassionate service to the city for the last 32 years. We want to remind everybody that we are volunteers. We shouldn't have to come and beg for health standards, cleaners, staff, tell you we're not prepared for the opioid crisis, and figure out what's wrong with the staffing model you're using. Again, we're volunteers. We have families, jobs, and lives we're trying to live. And this, frankly, running and out of the cold is a large enough task on its own. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafi. Questions for the Deputy and Councillor Wang Tam?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Rafi, for the deputation. With respect to the ongoing discussions with city staff, I realize that this is not the first time you've made known to them and to all of us the outstanding concerns of the out-of-code providers that have not been addressed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's 100% correct.
And in the staff report, there's some recommendations that are largely to, number one, increase the frequency of these meetings, so keep talking about it and to keep reviewing it, to then improve the efficiency, the quality, and the service delivery of the out-of-code program through cleaning and on-site staff reports. And the third recommendation is to assess opportunities to further health services and supports. Is it specific enough? Are these recommendations specific enough?
No. The one thing that we need is the staffing levels. From the survey that we just conducted, we do not have proper staff for safety and security, and we certainly do not have enough cleaners.
And so I recognize that because this is not the first time you've appeared before our committee, and as you noted, it's not the first time that you've raised these concerns with us, what are we doing? What are we not doing to address your concerns?
I think we've just got to strike right to the heart of the matter. The 2018-19 season is around the corner. We can't continue on like this. And certainly when a number of the out-of-the-colds are struggling financially, to then be saddled with close to $12,000 of cleaning services, additional cleaning services, is just unreasonable. We need to know that the health and safety aspect is handled. It's great to discuss about what we want to do, how to acquire more services, go to the LIN, whatever. You know, but we need to deal with this, and the clock is running down on this.
And so and I'm just trying to get to the point around safety, and I think that it's around safety and the quality of service, and hopefully that we don't lose the trust of the out-of-the-code community partners in the long run. If it's a $12,000 cost that the city can put through the 2019 budget process to make sure that there's a certain level of cleaning in these sites, if it's a matter of bumping up the dollar figure to Dixon Hall for perhaps another $200,000, $300,000 so we can staff up to have the proper level of staffing provision, is that helpful?
Yes, that's exactly what's needed.
And that's exactly what's missing in the report.
Right.
Even though at this point in time, we don't know what the true numbers are. It may be 12,000, maybe 10,000.
Right.
It may be 100,000 worth of staffing and maybe less, like maybe more.
Correct.
Okay, so, and in your discussions with staff, has there ever been, I guess, some clear assessments of what does each out-of-the-code service provider, community partner need?
So that's what we just conducted on our own.
We're getting there.
And again, these things are extremely time-consuming. I think that it's really caused an abundance of frustration. And I think, until we started sharing information, we were all in silos. So I think that everyone just assumed that this was, the way things were. But it isn't fair that I'm getting 2 cleaners and somebody else isn't getting any.
And so if there was a recommendation that you would provide for us to improve this report as it goes to council for final approval, as it can be sent forward through the 2019 budget process, what would that recommendation be?
It's exactly what you had said, that there would be an improvement in the staffing and cleaning levels.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just advised it doesn't go to council. It dies here, or it moves on from here.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it dies here, but it does not, it's not, we can send it to council if you wish, but it's not going to council, based on what's in front of us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
I
thank
may
you,
have a
Councillor
question
Wang
for
Tam.
staff then. I will have a question for staff.
Question for staff? Any other questions for the deputant? No?
Thank you.
Just very quickly, I'm just sort of glancing for the number of oh, I'm sorry, but I have a question for this deputant. Yeah, we do have, yes, just a reminder, we do have one more deputant. But Rafi, if you want to take one seat, take a seat just for 1 second. The number of out-of-coal locations, are you familiar with that number? I'm just sort of glancing.
The number is 16.
16?
Right.
And for capacity, are they about the same, or?
No, they vary.
They vary.
So some of the smaller ones, as I said, like would be, and this is not to diminish what anybody is doing. You bring one person in from out of the cold, you feed one person, that's great, you're doing, but the capacity levels are different. So some of the larger ones would be probably feeding about 160 or more, and they would be sleeping from anywhere up to 60 to 80.
So we need a funding model based on capacity.
We need a funding model based on capacity, a minimal safety standard that would say for X number of people in a room, you need Y staff. The next thing that you would have to do is look at some of the extenuating circumstances. There's one out of the cold that has because of the layout of its building, would require more staff. We have 2 out of the colds where I mentioned one of them where a large number of people are in their early 80s, and then we have another site where the people are in their early 70s. So they're going to need more. We cannot allow anything to go wrong there, so you're going to need an extra staff at least at each of those sites.
So my concern when we support faith-based groups in doing this great work is overreach and hyper-regulating, which many faith-based groups are not equipped to handle a hyper-regulated environment, and their board of directors will throw up their arms and say, well, we can't do this anymore. Would you agree that while you need the supports, we don't want to come in with unmanageable regulations that a volunteer or charitable organization just can't manage to implement?
Yeah. First, I totally agree with that. And I think that's why we're getting health guidelines. We're not getting health protocols, because when I spoke with Toronto Public Health, they said if there's protocols, we would have to send out someone to inspect, you could be shut down, that sort of thing. So we're getting best practices. We're getting guidelines. I mean, we hope we're getting them.
If my memory is correct, when you asked about needle cleanup and disposal,
right,
you were sent a 40-page manual?
No, we were. I wish we were provided with a 90-page document.
90-page.
Yeah, that we were asked to redact. 2 of us began. We had approached Councillor Mihevik and Councillor Cressy, and we started dealing with the Toronto Public Health. When we received the 90-page document and were asked to make comments and redact them, We kind of felt that it was above our pay grade. So we sent it back. But my understanding from staff is that we are going to get that down, and it's going to have posters, and it's going to be very easily disseminated. The issue with the needles, unfortunately, was never resolved, and there's massive problems at places like St. Pat's down on McCall, which is more or less the epicenter where cleaning staff are continuously finding needles. There's only 2 sites that had disposable containers, but I can tell you from my talks with staff, they are going to rectify that. And then the big issue will be the collection of the Sharps needle containers. But I believe that those 2 items are being dealt with.
So you've read these recommendations. It's really continuing the dialogue. Is that?
Well, we are running out of time for the out of the colds, and I think that everyone has just been pushed over the brink. If we were at the breaking point, we're sort of past it. We've got to know in the meeting on June, a couple of weeks ago, I think June 27th, one of the clergy said to staff that the thing that will break the back of the out of the colds will be the health and safety standards. Another member of the clergy was far more blunt. So we need to get this. This can't be ongoing discussions. I'd love to sit around the campfire and chat about, all these things. The stopwatch is running down on this. We've got to know that we can go in, that I can not have my heart in my throat when there's a baby naming in the same area that we have our out of the cold, that there's a nursery being set up there, or a daycare center, that I have staff who are seniors, and that there's enough people. Again, in my site, that's not an issue.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Rafi.
Thank you.
Emily?
So I'm here, excuse me, I'm here sort of to support Rafi's comments because I come from the aspect of people with disabilities that have had to use the respite centers. Some of them are more accessible than others. Some of them are, shall we say, very scary for people with disabilities, whether it's physical, visual, auditory, or other. We're putting these people in jeopardy, not just the elderly staff, but the people with disabilities are starting to not want to stay at these respite centers. They're scared to. They get intimidated, they get beaten up, they get their stuff stolen constantly. I have friends who called me this morning. I wasn't going to deputate today. I was like, no, I think Rafi will do it. He's awesome. And I thought, Rafi will do it great. But then I had one of my friends call me, and she knew this meeting was coming up, and she's legally blind with a service dog. She had to retire her service dog last winter because she had so much fear in going to an out of the cold placement because the last year she'd gone, her dog had gotten kicked numerous times, and her dog had been injured by another community member. It was outside of the center, so the staff couldn't do anything. It was actually behind the church. But I know of a particular respite center, and I know the one Rafi's talking about. Actually, both of them. One of them is on Dundas. I won't say the name. And people with disabilities will not go there because they're so scared. And the biggest fear is violence. There's so much violence. There's so much just crap going on, and staff can't handle it. And the cleanliness issues are getting worse and worse and worse. Another friend of mine who has diabetes got gangrene from being in the respite centers. He got infection in his leg. He had an open wound and it got infected at the respite center. The hospital confirmed it. I have about 25 people that I know that are multiply disabled or different disabilities who have to access these centers because they can't find a place to live. Because the shelter staff that they've tried to go to have no clue as to help them, have no accessible format of, excuse me, counselors. The two counselors that should be listening to accessibility issues, it'd be great if you'd listen. Thank you. There's no alternative format for the Welcome Home book. The city website is only accessible to screen readers if you're using a computer. It doesn't work very well on cell phones. I've been asking for years of shelter staff. I even took the shelters, the SSHA, to the city ombudsman when my husband and I's lives were put in danger, when staff had no clue as to help people with disabilities. They still don't. The training still is not there properly. So these people stay outside except for the winter, or they try to use respite centers. We need better staffing. We need better cleaning. And why is it that we only contract to one agency to do this stuff? Why is it we only rely on Dixon Hall? Is there not other agencies that can pitch in and help? I have friends who are street help from Sanctuary and street help from other places who are amazing people. One of them speaks here on a regular basis and is one of my closest friends. When we were homeless, he was the difference between us getting any help and us getting no help. So I would really like you to realize that people with disabilities, their lives are being put in danger, as are others. But who are the most vulnerable in the shelter system and in the homelessness system? It's seniors, women, and people with disabilities. And I just ask you to please listen to Rafi. Listen to our advocates and stop putting people's lives in danger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you, Emily. Are there any other people who wanted to speak on this matter, this item? No? We can go to questions for staff. We can go to questions for staff.
Sure, yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the comments provided by Mr. Aaron about still the service gaps that exist in the Out of the Code program, is there not more that we can do to immediately provide supports for them so that they can be prepared and get ready to provide service in this upcoming winter season, which I think we all know is going to be pretty difficult?
So through the chair, just a week and a half ago, myself and my senior management team personally met with representatives, including Mr. Aaron, about this specific issue. We made some funds available for a number of the sites in terms of repairs and those types of pieces. I called Toronto Public Health myself. We're pulling together a working group to address the issues around the cleaning guidelines, not standards, and we will absolutely whittle that down into something that can be quite functional and usable for the upcoming season. We also talked about the harm reduction issue. The Sharps containers are a non-issue. They will be made available, and also we will have a process for picking those up. We're doing a full review of the Dixon Hall contract with Dixon Hall to identify the funds that are available within that contract and the services that are provided. This is a long-standing issue. We have not had, in terms of the base contract, a big increase. So staffing levels, in terms of the number of staffing hours that would be available, would be the same hours that have been available for some time. So we'll do a review of that. Last season, we did add $80,000 for food and other sort of maintenance type issues. So we are working on this piece. The winter before, we were at 102% occupancy. There was a lot of pressure in the system. There remains a lot of pressure in the system. But last winter with the respite sites, that we were able to open up. We did see a little bit of a reduction in the pressure. We're running around 92% at the out of the colds, and our goal is to continue to reduce pressure on that system.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for that answer. It was very helpful. Understanding that we seem not to be able to get in front of the crisis around the need for immediate shelter services and deeply affordable housing. We're seeing a lot more individuals street involved with mental health, with very specific complex needs in public spaces, whether they be libraries or community centers or just, you know, in the parks, in the ravines. And that's right now in the summertime. And we know that people do tend to go indoors again in the winter. And on top of that, we're seeing a real need to provide additional service and supports for those who are coming in for asylum seeking. Understanding that there is nervousness in the out-of-the-code program service providers, including those that may be contemplating whether or not they want to come back in the 2018 season. If we lose even 3 or 4 of those service providers, what will it do to the existing system that is already under so much pressure?
So first of all, I'd say that, you know, the service that's provided is absolutely amazing, and the volunteers are amazing, and the satisfaction from the clients is, you know, very, very high. What we are trying to do within the organization is have rapid expansion of services in the coming number of seasons, not just this upcoming season. So we have the plan for 28 new shelter sites, 9 this year, that we hope takes some pressure off. We also have the extension of the respite sites, so 600 spaces for the upcoming winter season that, again, we hope really helps to take some of that pressure off. And you know, the service has been so amazing that we, from the out of the colds, that we hope that we can continue to support and have those services provided in the coming season, because they are, you know, they're outstanding. But we also want to make sure that we develop a system that is not reliant on those other things over time.
But if we do not meet those objectives of securing new sites for shelters and getting them open by this winter, which is only 7 months away, or actually, no, it's even less now, isn't it? It's 5 months away. If we are not able to open up additional respite sites, including the ones that are sort of the dome structures, and we end up losing 3 or 4 of the out-of-the-code programs simply because the membership as well as the leadership of those synagogues and temples and churches have said this is just unsustainable. They can't do it. They've lost their volunteer capacity. If those things happen, what happens to the existing crisis that we're in right now?
So through the chair, we are working towards being on track for all of those things. If in fact, for whatever you know, outside reasons we were not able to provide those services, then it would be challenging, no question about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wang Tam. Any other questions for staff? Speakers? Councillor Cresty?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you to the Interfaith Alliance, both for the ongoing work within the Out of the Colds and for raising the issues through the survey, and our staff for the work both last year and this year as we scale up with what is becoming, and I think it's been illustrated through your deputation, Rafi, an increasingly complex process of serving those who are homeless and vulnerable in our city. And it's increasingly complex, I think, in large part at least, I can speak from our experience, not just due to the rising demands, but the nature of drug use that is taking place and the complexity that is putting, the challenges and the complex set of challenges that's putting a lot of our staff and volunteers in. And so whether it's our shelters, our respites, or out of the colds, we're seeing similar challenges that are putting pressure on staff, on the type and nature of supports for those staff to provide and the harm reduction services alongside it. And so I'm certainly glad to hear that the working group has been struck both looking with TPH around sharps and disposals, but also with city staff, the Interfaith Alliance, and Dixon Hall relating to staffing in this winter. It's clear, and this is across all of our sectors, that if we are going to be able to effectively respond in a challenging context this upcoming winter when the pressures are most severe, we will have to scale up both to serve the clients best, but also to ensure the safety of the staff and volunteers and to prevent burnout. And it's to that end that I'm certainly supportive of the measures that have been taken place to this date by our staff. I understand that Todd Orvitz has been assigned directly to work on this, which I think is helpful, but also Councillor Wang Tams is working on a motion to ensure that resources could be drawn upon as needed to deal with some of the staffing supports coming into this winter. And so with that, I can conclude my remarks, which will be my final remarks, I suppose, as a CDR member for this term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cressy. Councillor Wang Tam, did you want to move your motion?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move this particular motion, and I recognize that this is still being developed. I can see that the staff are trying to sort out what is the appropriate amount, but the motion really just gives the staff the ability to draw up to $500,000 from the Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund in order for them to improve the service delivery of the Out of the Code program in this upcoming 2018 winter season, and then to also develop a more sustainable funding plan as they move through the 2019 budget process in consultation with the Out of the Code service program providers and users. I think, and the reason being is I think where we are with the Out of the Codes is that they have not ever been intended to be this 32-year service provider. I think we can all agree that what they do is an extraordinary service. They supplement all the exceptional work that the City of Toronto plus all our agency providers are doing out there in the needs of communities that are most marginalized and most vulnerable. And because they've never really seen a significant investment of dollars, I think what we're also seeing is that this massive crisis and crush that has hit the shelter programs and services is not isolated to just the fact that we're feeling at the city because we provide shelter services, or agencies are feeling it that provide contracted city services for shelter services. The Out of the Code programs are also feeling it. Whether or not they need the full $500,000, I don't know. But what I'd like to do is make sure that the staff are empowered to work with the service providers so they have everything at their fingertips this year. This is going to be a very tough winter. I think that we can all agree to that. Everyone is nodding. And we have to not be scrambling again like we did last year. I'm so incredibly grateful for the providers of service because they have been helping us as we all try to address the massive service gaps. And I think that what we have not been able to do, and I know we're trying desperately to get in front of it, we haven't been able to get in front of it overall. It has been a very difficult time leading from behind. And by making this big, bold jump ahead, and even then I don't think it necessarily is that bold because we probably needed to have that conversation sooner, and by the fact that even the SSHA staff and their leadership is meeting with the Out of the Code program just most recently, we're already starting from behind once again. And this is not because they haven't been asking and coming forward saying, we need more help, this is what's before us. It has been largely because it has not been prioritized. And I think it's because we have in some ways taken it for granted that you'll always be there. I am hearing from the leadership of these religious organizations that don't count on us forever because we may not be able to help you moving forward and moving ahead. So let's show them that we're there for them. Let's show them that their service is essential. Let's show them that we will do everything we can to keep them at the table until we can all get in front of this together and hopefully at some point in time see the curve of the crisis and be able to look at it behind us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang Tam. Any other speakers before I just share a few words? Councillor Fletcher?
First of all, I just want to thank, kind of on behalf of this committee and all of us in the city, the incredible work that's done by all the volunteers in Out of the Cold. I don't think we say that enough to them, to the faith communities that have taken this up, that every week they all come together, they make food, they bed people down, they look after them, really out of a strong sense of mission in the city of Toronto. And there are so many of them. So I know that we happy to support making sure everybody gets the resources, but I just don't think that we thank the communities enough for day in and day out thinking about this. Maybe once a week, but the planning is more than once a week, getting it all organized and having the strong support from the congregations. And I know that business areas support, that everyone wants to do this work. So it's unfortunate that they have to do this work, but it is an important part of a caring community. And it's because we have a very caring city that these things take place. So to you and your people, thank you very much, and to all of the Out of the Cold groups. And if I'd had a chance to write that up, I would have actually made a motion here today, Mr. Chair, that said the City Council thank all of the Out of the Cold programs for their incredible work over every winter, and we thank them very much for that. So perhaps our clerk could just put that up before you make your remarks. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think, yes, we're not going to be here now. We're going on our holiday at the end of the month. So tracking what's going on for the winter months, we're not able to do that. And I think from today, we have a very good plan, and I think the staff are very well aware that the pressure is on for the winter in order not to have the type of issues that we had. We're planning ahead, we're thinking ahead, we're working to make sure that we don't have people stuck out in the cold in this coming winter if it's a brutal winter again. And as well to say that this committee, it is our last meeting, and to thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your chairing. And nice to have our Deputy City Manager acting here and all the good work she's done on childcare over so many years. But that this has really been a watershed moment for all of the shelter and housing issues here, in particularly the shelter issues. And we won't have the same committee next time. We will have an affordable housing committee that will also deal with housing, the continuum, including shelters. So I do just want to thank the staff for all of their heavy lifting and responsiveness around shelters. We created a new model. We're implementing a new model. And we are as well catching up on our shelter and homelessness, making sure people have a place to stay, short-term, overnight, respite. And I think we have a much better understanding of the system as a whole now than when this committee started at the beginning, and I think staff in the city also have that. So just congratulations to everybody. Job not done, but job well done. Thank you.
Don't forget to move your motion.
Oh, my motion, City Council extend appreciation to all of the Out of the Cold program service providers for their work and service to the citizens of Toronto. So that will go to council. Oh, sorry, the residents, yes, residents. Thank you, Jill.
There's not much more I can add. I won't mention the name, but certainly I've visited the Out of the Cold program that operates out of Ward 10 many times over the years. They do fantastic work. It's a wonderful, wonderful evening for people who have suffered various hardship, a downturn in their lives, and the wonderful volunteers and good people that bring some safety, some security, and some joy to them during the winter months is actually heartwarming to watch. And it is the faith-based groups in our social capital that are really the lead on that in this city. And without them, we would certainly be in big trouble. And at the same time, we have to strike a balance, as I mentioned before, and I mentioned several times, this balance between not hyper-regulating, because when it comes to charitable organizations or faith-based organizations, they are not set up for hyper-regulation. They are not airlines, and they are not telecommunications companies and train service or rail service. They are volunteer organizations, and if you hyper-regulate, you burn them out and you wear them out, and they will not participate in this. At the same time, we have to support them and listen very carefully to what their needs are, and listen carefully in advance of the winter season, so that they can have the resources. And I believe Council will support this funding motion that will top up. I've worked it out to about $31,000 per location. It will change because of various capacity levels and so forth, on top of our current funding formula. And certainly, we should continue the conversation to make sure that those funds are spent where they need to be. They're highly targeted in the areas of weakness. So with that, I would simply thank, once again, staff for this ongoing conversation. Thank Rafi for his dedication in this noble cause and for being here on a regular basis to share his insights, because there's no better source of information than a frontline volunteer who's doing great work in the local community. So we have two motions. We have Councillor Fletcher's motion, which is a thank you to the out of the cold service providers. We can take that. We can take that first. Okay. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. And we have the second motion, Councillor Wang Tam, which is the funding motion and direction to City Council. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously as well. And the item is amended. All those in favor? And that is approved unanimously. I think we're done. Yeah, we are adjourned. Enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy the rest of the summer. And once again, thank you very much for your commitment to the important matters that we work on at this committee.